Hello, my name is Tyler, and I was a happy kid up to the age of 11. You might wonder why. Well, it was around this time that my parents told me that I would be getting a little brother. Now, you can probably guess where this story is headed. A new kid arrives, and the old kid feels threatened. From there, the story can go two ways. We could build a bond and share hugs, or we could watch as our relationship went up in flames. Thankfully, there weren't any flames involved, but I did ditch him in the woods. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me explain. When my parents told me about adopting a kid, they were practically jumping through the roof with joy. They painted a picture of my brother and me always playing together in the yard. They also said how he would look up to me like a superhero and how it would be my job to protect him. I started to get excited too. I mean, having someone look up to me sounded terrific, and I was even looking forward to having someone to play with. Maybe I could also teach him how to play soccer. So when the day finally arrived and my dad went to pick him up, I was so excited that I waited by the window for them to arrive. When they walked through the door, I rushed over to greet them. Hiding behind my dad's leg was a short, shaggy-haired kid with glasses named Billy. My mom introduced us before taking him around to see the house. That's when my dad pulled me aside. He explained that Billy was very shy, and it was up to us to make him feel more at home. I told him he can count on me, and that I will help Billy feel at home and adjust the fastest and best way possible. I love the idea of being the big brother, and seeing how my dad depended on me made me feel better. At first, everything was fine, but it didn't take long for the differences to show themselves. It started with dinner. When we sat down to eat my favorite meal, we found out that Billy was allergic, and that was the last time we ate it together. "We don't want to make Billy feel left out," my parents would say to me. It made me sad, but I understood. If Billy was allergic to it, of course I didn't want to cause him any harm. But the differences between us became even clearer when it came to school. Billy was apparently gifted and performed above his grade. I, on the other hand, was barely managing. The differences between us became even clearer when it came to school. Billy was apparently gifted and performed above his grade. Me, on the other hand, I was just getting by. That's when his awards started to come. Being placed on the honor roll, scoring highest on a regional math competition, winning the spelling bee, and academic decathlon. His awards could make a small mountain. Who could compete with that? I could sense how my parents were of him, and to be honest, I felt jealous. I mean, I was happy for him, but I missed getting all the attention that I used to get before he joined us. I tried to be the big brother, but everything that I was good at, Billy was horrible. We tried hockey, but he kept falling. Then I tried to teach him soccer, but he was scared of getting hit by the ball. The worst part was, when he got scratched or injured, my parents would yell at me to keep him safe, and when I tried to go out and play without him to keep him from getting injured, my parents would yell at me to spend more time with my brother. I couldn't win. We were invited for dinner at the house of my parents' friends one evening. I was happy to be visiting the Browns again. As usual, I expected them to ask me about soccer and fishing and just laugh together. But the conversation took a different turn. They were just talking about how lucky my parents are for having a child as smart and accomplished as Billy. They called him genius. They also made fun of my parents and their not-so-amazing math skills. I expected my parents to involve me in the conversation at least, but they didn't. The only thing they said was, "Let's hope Tyler wakes up tomorrow with fantastic math skills too." They were joking, I know, but I've had enough. Then it happened. My moment to shine came. A big soccer match was coming up that I was very proud of. I knew that my parents would not miss it for the world. I was finally going to be able to get the attention for once. Or so I thought. Billy had a regional math competition on the same day. My parents promised that they would go to that first, but they would not miss my match. I probably don't have to tell you the rest. We won the match, and I even scored the final goal. Everyone was celebrating, and it felt amazing. But where were my parents? When I looked around for them, they were nowhere to be found. My coach came up to me and explained that my dad called him to let him know they wouldn't be able to make it. I was heartbroken. Apparently, Billy's event ran long and they were stuck in traffic, but I wasn't listening. On our way home, they tried to apologize and talk about how they lost track of time. They talked about everything that happened at Billy's event and asked me how the match went, but I just ignored them. By the time we made it back to the house, I could feel my eyes starting to burn from the tears that I was trying not to shed. My dad opened the front door, and I ran to my room without looking back. I cried into my pillow until my parents came into the room to apologize again. They said how they wanted to make it up to me by taking us all camping like we used to do. When we arrived at the campsite, I started to get excited despite myself. I remembered how my mom always helped me put up the tents, how Dad and I would be on the boat fishing, and how we would all sit around the campfire at night laughing and telling stories. Sadly, that happiness didn't last long. When it was time to set up the tents, my mom and Dad told me to do it with Billy. They wanted me to be the big brother and show him how it was done, but it didn't go well. Billy couldn't get the hang of it, so my mom decided to put the tents up with him to teach him as she taught me. When it was time to go fishing, it was the three of us, but we had to cut it short because Billy was getting sick on the boat. It was all happening again. It didn't matter where we were or what we were doing. Everything revolved around Billy. So, I decided to get even. I convinced my parents to let us go explore. When they agreed, I led us deep into the woods and planned on leaving him for a bit just to scare him. He got distracted by some bugs on the ground, and I used the opportunity to sneak away. However, my plan backfired. When I looked around, I didn't know where I was, and everything looked the same. In my attempt to sneak away from Billy, I wasn't paying attention. In short, I was lost. I tried to find my way back to camp, but it was hopeless. I started to freak out. Maybe I deserved this for what I tried to do to Billy, I thought out loud. By the time the sun was almost entirely down, I started to yell for help, thinking that no one would come. That's when I saw him. Billy came rushing out of the brush. He intently gave me a hug and said that he's glad he found me. I don't know how he did it, but he grabbed my hand and led us out of the woods and back to the camp. The whole time we were walking, I heard him counting. It was like he mapped out the directions in his head. By the time we made it back to camp, the sun had completely sunk from the sky and the stars were out. My parents saw us come out of the trees and rushed over. They started to yell about how worried they were and how they told us not to go too far. When they turned their attention to me, I prepared myself to get the worst of it when Billy stepped in. "I'm sorry," he began. "Tyler warned me, but I ran off." I was shocked. They told Billy to be more careful and to listen to his brother. When they left, I turned to Billy and asked him why you took the blame. He looked at me, smiled, and said, "That's what brothers do for each other." I smiled back and wrapped my arm around his shoulder as we walked over to the campfire. That night, we told stories and watched the stars. The next day, Billy insisted on staying back with Mom as Dad and I went fishing. Following this incident, everything between me and Billy changed. At least from my perspective, because he always saw me as a big brother. We started to get along much better, and I learned a very important life lesson. No matter the ups and downs we may have had in the past, or will have in the future, I'm happy to have my little brother by my side.